Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told Us podcast. We're going to be stepping back in time today
Okay.
to the heart of New York City
Right.
in the early 20th century,
Sounds good.
a time of immense change
Yeah.
and, as we'll uncover,
Uh-huh.
immense tragedy. So picture this: bustling streets, horse-drawn carriages, and a city skyline punctuated by those brand-new marvels skyscrapers.
It was a time of stark contrasts, really. Alongside this incredible growth and innovation, a darker side existed. A reality for many, particularly immigrant workers.
Right.
That was marked by hardship and often danger.
And that danger came into sharp focus on a seemingly ordinary Saturday,
Uh-huh.
March 25th in 1911,
Okay.
with a fire that shocked the nation and forever changed the course of labor history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire.
Yeah, this event wasn't just about the fire itself, but what it revealed about the working conditions of the time.
Right.
Especially for those who were most vulnerable.
Let's dive into that, starting with the setting. We're talking about the Triangle Waist Company, a garment factory located in the Ash Building in Greenwich Village.
Right.
What was it like inside this factory?
Well, you can imagine a bustling, crowded space on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of this building, filled with the sounds of sewing machines
Wow.
and the energy of hundreds of workers, mostly young immigrant women,
Yeah.
many of them Italian and Jewish. They were creating what were then the height of fashion, shirtwaists.
Shirtwaists.
Yes, those stylish women's blouses that symbolized a shift in women's roles and their increasing presence in the workforce.
So these women were part of a larger social change,
Yeah.
but working under what we now know were incredibly dangerous conditions.
Absolutely. They worked long hours, 6 days a week, for meager wages in a setting that was cramped and lacked even basic safety measures.
Oh, wow.
And sadly, this wasn't unusual.
Oh, really?
Sweatshops like this were all too common, largely because labor laws, as we know them today, were practically non-existent.
So setting the scene then. It's Saturday, March 25th, 1911.
All right.
The end of the workday at the Triangle Waist Company. What happens next?
Well, as the workday was ending, a
Uh-huh.
fire broke out on the 8th floor. Something so seemingly small, likely a discarded match or cigarette in a bin overflowing with scraps of flammable fabric,
Wow.
sparked a chain of events that would have devastating consequences.
I can imagine the chaos and panic.
Yeah.
The fire quickly spread, fueled by all the fabric, right?
Exactly. And tragically, many of the exit doors to the stairwells were locked.
Locked.
Yeah, common practice at the time to supposedly prevent theft and unauthorized breaks. But on that day, it proved to be a fatal decision.
Oh, gosh.
Workers were trapped.
It's hard to even grasp the desperation of that moment.
Right.
What were their options?
Well, some tried to escape using the fire escape, but it was flimsy
Oh,
and tragically collapsed under the weight of so many people.
oh my God.
Others crowded into the elevators until they, too, became unusable.
And the fire department, could they help?
They arrived quickly, but their ladders couldn't even reach the 8th floor, let alone the 9th or 10th.
Wow.
The flames were too intense, and the scene was made even more horrifying as people, realizing they had no other choice, began jumping from the windows.
The image of that is just seared into our collective memory.
It
A
is.
symbol of just how desperate the situation was.
It's a chilling reminder of the human cost when worker safety is ignored.
Before we go any further into the aftermath and the fire's legacy, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other stories on Tell Me More. We've got so many more captivating deep dives coming your way.
Now back to that grim day in 1911.
Okay.
In the aftermath of the fire, as the smoke cleared, the death toll was staggering: 146 people,
Wow.
most of them young women. Their bodies were laid out at a nearby pier for identification.
Oh, gosh.
A heartbreaking scene that underscored the magnitude of the tragedy.
146 lives lost. It's a number that's hard to fathom.
It is.
What happened next? Was anyone held accountable for this terrible loss of life?
Well, the factory owners, Max Blank and Isaac Harris, were put on trial for manslaughter. However, they were ultimately acquitted.
Acquitted? That's hard to believe considering the scale of the tragedy and the obvious lack of safety measures.
It speaks to the complexities of the legal system at that time.
Right.
The focus of the trial was on proving that the owners knew the doors were locked, which the prosecution couldn't do definitively. It highlights how difficult it can be to hold those in power accountable, especially when workers' rights and safety are at stake.
It's a stark reminder that even in the face of such a horrific event, achieving justice isn't always straightforward.
Right.
But did anything positive come out of this tragedy? Did it lead to any meaningful changes.
Absolutely. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire became a turning point in American labor history.
Okay.
The public outcry and demand for reform were immense.
Yeah, so amidst the grief and anger,
Yeah.
there was also a push for action.
Uh-huh.
Who were some of the key figures that emerged from this movement for reform?
One name that stands out is Rose Schneiderman.
Rose Schneiderman.
She was a labor activist who delivered a powerful speech at a memorial for the victims, challenging those in power to move beyond condolences and enact real change.
What was it about her speech that resonated so strongly?
Well, Schneiderman spoke directly to the experiences of working women, many of whom were immigrants like herself. She didn't just mourn the dead. She called for workers to organize and fight for their rights.
Wow.
Urging those in power to see them not as statistics, but as human beings deserving of dignity and safety.
It was a call to action that really seemed to galvanize the movement.
It was.
What were some of the concrete steps taken towards reform?
Well, one significant outcome was the formation of the Factory Investigating Commission here in New York, spearheaded by future Senator Robert Wagner. This wasn't just a committee sitting in a room. They went out into the field, inspecting factories, interviewing workers, and gathering evidence of the widespread dangerous conditions that existed.
So they were determined to get a real sense of the problem.
Exactly.
Not just rely on reports.
Precisely. And their findings were shocking.
Oh.
They uncovered hundreds of factories where conditions were ripe for another Triangle-like tragedy.
My gosh.
This led to a wave of new legislation aimed at improving workplace safety, not just in New York, but across the nation.
Can you give some specific examples of the changes that came about?
Well, they tackled everything from regulating working hours and improving sanitation to mandating fire escapes, sprinkler systems, and fire drills.
Wow.
They even established regulations for the number of people allowed in a factory at a given time, something directly related to the overcrowding that contributed to the Triangle disaster.
Right.
These were things that sadly hadn't been standard practice before.
It's incredible to think about how many of the workplace safety regulations we take for granted today stems from this one tragic event.
It's a testament to the power of collective action and the determination to prevent such a horrific loss of life from ever happening again.
Right. The legacy of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire lives on in the safer working conditions that millions of people benefit from every single day.
But even with these reforms, the fight for worker safety and fair labor practices is an ongoing one, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
While the Triangle Fire was a pivotal moment, it didn't eradicate all the problems. Even today, we see instances of worker exploitation, unsafe conditions, and the need for vigilance to protect those who are most vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we can never become complacent.
And speaking of remembering, there are organizations dedicated to keeping the memory of the Triangle Fire alive and continuing the fight for workers' rights.
Right.
Can you tell us about them?
One prominent group is remember the Triangle Fire Coalition?
Okay.
They've been instrumental in organizing commemorations, exhibitions, and educational programs to ensure that this tragic event, and more importantly, its lessons, are not forgotten. So they're not just about remembering the past, but also about connecting it to the present and future.
Exactly. And they've been key in the creation of a permanent memorial at the site of the fire.
Oh, wow.
A tangible reminder of the tragedy and its lasting impact.
Okay.
This memorial features the names of all 146 victims inscribed on it. A powerful symbol of remembrance and a call to action.
It's a sobering reminder that each of those 146 lives lost represented a human being with dreams, aspirations, and families who loved them.
It does.
And it underscores the importance of not just remembering this event as a historical footnote, but understanding its continued relevance to issues like workers' rights, social justice, and the role of government in protecting its citizens.
Absolutely.
Speaking of remembering, there's a detail about the timing of the fire that often gets overlooked.
Okay.
It happened on a Saturday.
Right.
Most factories weren't open on Saturdays back then, were they?
That's right. But the Triangle Waste Company pushed its workers to produce more to meet the ever-growing demands of the fashion industry.
Right.
That decision to work on a Saturday adds another layer of tragedy to this already devastating event.
It's heartbreaking to imagine the families waiting for their loved ones to return home.
It is.
Completely unaware of the inferno that was engulfing their workplace.
Yeah.
The not knowing,
right.
The shock, just adds to the profound sense of loss.
It really personalizes the impact. reminding us that this wasn't just about a fire. It was about 146 individual lives cut short, each with its own story and ripple effect on those left behind.
It's a story that stays with you, that compels us to ask, what does this all mean for us today, all these years later?
Yeah.
We've certainly made progress in terms of worker safety and labor rights, but as you pointed out, the fight is far from over.
That's right. We can draw parallels between the conditions that led to the Triangle Fire and what we see in certain industries even today. Think of the fast fashion industry, for example.
Oh, yeah.
The pressure to produce cheap clothing quickly often comes at the expense of worker safety and fair wages.
Wow.
It's a sobering reminder that the lessons of the Triangle Fire are still relevant in the 21st century.
So what can we do? How can we honor the memory of those lost in the Triangle Fire and contribute to a better future for workers everywhere?
It starts with awareness, with education.
Okay.
Understanding the historical context, the struggles of the past, helps us recognize similar patterns in the present.
And it's not just about knowing history, it's about taking action,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Supporting ethical businesses, speaking out against injustice, advocating for policies that protect workers, these are all ways we can make a difference.
Right.
Even small actions can contribute to a larger movement for change.
It's empowering to think that each of us, in our own way, can help carry the torch for those who fought for better working conditions over a century ago.
Their legacy lives on in every workplace where safety is prioritized, where workers are treated with dignity and respect. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, as horrific as it was, ignited a movement that continues to this day.
And it reminds us that progress isn't inevitable. It requires constant vigilance, advocacy, and a willingness to speak up for what's right.
Well said. The stories of those who perished in the Triangle Fire should never be forgotten.
Right.
They serve as a powerful call to action, a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
My pleasure.
It's been a truly thought-provoking deep dive into a pivotal moment in history.
It's been my pleasure. It's crucial that we keep these conversations going, that we learn from the past, and that we continue to fight for a future where tragedies like the Triangle Fire never happen again.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Tell Me More. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. We've got so many more fascinating stories to tell, each one offering a unique glimpse into the past and its connections to the present. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep telling the stories that need to be heard.